All right. Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Martinen. I'm a CTO for a company called NewGen Knowledge Works. We've been helping publishers of books and journal bring their content to market for the past 20 years. I recently joined the company about 10 months ago, and I was invited by my producer, Linda, to host this panel. And as I was trying to find an adequate subject for us to discuss, and with my novice view to journal publishing, it dawned on me that journals had been online for a very long time, much before books and much before EPUB. And when I was seeing what was happening with books and EPUBs and applications, and how the content of books was being enhanced, was being augmented by, and was taking advantage, and books were taking advantage of the internet and the Web 2.0, it seemed to me that journals were lagging. And so I set up on trying to find a panel of people that have been active in journal publishing, that have been leading new initiatives, and started to have a conversation with them. And over the past few months and over the last few days, I've continued this conversation. And then I wanted to bring this conversation in the room, and I wanted to make this conversation very interactive. So I'm going to ask questions to the panelists, then they're going to counter each other, and then at the end of each question I'll invite the audience to also participate in one or two questions. So maybe different from other sessions where the Q&A is all at the end. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. Linda, if you can help me to try and get a mic or two for the audience, that'll be great. Okay. So we have a wonderful panel today. Byron is Vice President of Professional Publishing at Premedia Global, responsible for the health and wealth of the professional content division. They provide editorial, production, and technology services to scholarly publishers. He's been in the industry for 15 years. He's worked at industry leaders such as Aptara and Ovid Technology, and he's an active member of SSP and has been for the past 10 years. And just so you know who I'm talking about, and I hope my panelists will excuse me, I've taken pictures from them from the internet, so they might not be the best looking pictures. Please excuse me. We have Daniel Reisch, who is a senior UX experience analyst for Wiley Technology Design and Innovation Group. She's got a background in front-end development and human-computer interactions. She's focused on several initiatives, I think 5 as of last count, to deliver better experience for scholarly content across channels and devices. And I think that's a recurring theme with the cloud and mobile technology. Most recently, she's led the user experience design on the iPad app for the, I'm not going to try and say it, it's a mouthful, but I will still, Ange Wante Kemi International Edition, so dealing with the difficulties of formulas and chemistry. And she's very active in the Wiley Online Library, which is the platform which provides 1,600 peer-reviewed journals and over 10,000 books. Then we have Gareth. Gareth is a chief architect at GPSL, Global Publishing Solutions, world leading provider of bespoke publishing system, automated publishing system. He's got about 12 years of experience in sales development and implementation, strong technical background, and he spent the last 4 years designing and developing, supporting large digital publishing systems for books and journals for the American Chemical Society. So we'll hear how ACS has benefited from this automated approach. Gurvinder Batra is a founder and CTO at Kiwi Tech. He leads design and development for innovative smartphone and tablet apps, with over 20 years of experience, having been one of the original founders of Aptara. Gurvinder helped create the first XML publish, the industry's first front-end XML workflows, and he's going to tell us how companies such as Wiley have been using mobile applications and devices to bring their content to life. Kaveh Bazargan is the founder of River Valley. He started this company about 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, to introduce computer-generated illustrations to UK publisher. It's based in the UK with production in Kerala. Its bread and butter is typesetting for STM publishers, using only pure XML, and you'll hear the interesting approach that Kaveh has on saying that XML should rule. So when we ask the question, is XML enough, he says it's more than enough. It's actually perfect. And then we have Laura. Laura Templeton is with Wiley as marketing manager and for professional development. She's got a background in traditional marketing, circulation management. She oversaw the transition of print to web-based based marketing for over 30 subscriptions. And she currently serves on the Wiley Global Social Media Work Group to facilitate knowledge and adoption of best practices in social media through Wiley. And I know she's also active on the Wiley Online Library. So I really came to look at journals and had this impression that don't fix it if it ain't broke kind of a syndrome was happening. And I was very happily surprised by having this conversation to find out that there are many initiatives happening. So without further ado, I'll ask my first question to Gareth. And basically, Gareth, you designed these highly automated systems, automated publishing solutions for journals. And tell us a little bit over the past 4 years how pushing automated systems has basically pushed the boundaries of innovation.
That's a good question. Thanks, Patrick. Hello, everyone. I'll try not to speak too fast because I obviously have an accent. I know it's difficult for some in the room. As you said before, my name's Gareth Oakes. I'm solution architect. I actually wear a lot of hats. I start out very technical in the context of what we're talking about today, though, with the American Chemical Society. I was involved from the inception of the project as an architect, designer, did a bit of development work, a bit of project management, so I feel pretty well qualified to describe some of the details that we're interested in today. So what did we do for the American Chemical Society? To begin with, they approached us with a problem producing ebooks. For them, that was in PDF format at that point in time. That was a few years back now. So we did a simple, well, we thought it was simple. It's probably pretty complicated, but we did what we thought was a fairly simple system for them with the books. So we got a number of their symposium series automated. Luckily for us, they already had a system in place for dealing with the XML. So they got a lot of the author manuscripts converted to XML, and then we could feed them through the automated system. So that was a linchpin there. The more interesting part, obviously, for this discussion is just as we reached the tail end of there, they said, that looks pretty good, what can you do for journals? And as most of you in the room are probably aware, journals are quite a different proposition from books. Books are very simple, straightforward layout. Journals are all two-column, very complicated rules about how they should be laid out. They must be very professional, obviously, there's a lot of value in them. So we sat down with the ACS and said, what do you mean automate journals? No one's ever done that before. We put some shape around that. We had quite a number of discussions. We are experts in a certain technology called 3B2 or Advanced Print Publisher. So we presented this as a solution for them. It has a number of key features around automation of pagination. Obviously, the print was a very important thing to get automated. As they already had a web product working. So what we did there is we took XML. Again, they had a very good system for doing what most people call XML first. So after acceptance and peer review, they send it straight off to vendors in India and get NLM or JATS tagged XML files back. That goes into a workflow system based on Documentum, which will hold the content and also manage the workflow. The first thing that happens is it comes straight to our system for a proof. We're able to automatically generate the proof with its full final presentation. The key thing here is that we retain a file which has all the pages and the XML linked to the pages. So this piece of software I talked about before is able to not import the XML and make pages. The XML is the pages. That's sort of the key thing there. So we're able to keep this package, which is obviously very important because the next step is you send the proof to the author who inevitably has some form of corrections they want to apply. So we have a system whereby it can go one of two ways. The happy path, well, the first happy path is that there's no corrections, which is a good thing, because it means we can go straight on to the next step. The next happy path is a very simple typographic correction of some sort. The ACS guys actually have an XML authoring tool based on Arbortext internally. They already had that, so we're able to let them make an XML change. Because it's automatically composed, they feed it back into the system and they get a new proof with those corrections in it. The unhappy path, well, happy for the vendors but unhappy for ACS, is that there is a major correction, like we need figures moved around or we need stuff removed, stuff that's just too difficult to do as a simple typographic change. In that case, what happens is this package, and this is the important bit, is those pages and the XML linked to them can get sent to a vendor who can open this on their system, make the corrections and send it back. So you're able to quite cleverly handle all the simple cases but still manage the difficult cases. So that's proofing and corrections done. Once it's time to do the final web PDF, again, we've still got all the pages in memory, all the XML. It's XML first, so the XML is the source, and we're able to publish in PDF form. There's, I think, 3 different PDF formats we produce out at the back of that, and it all happens automatically. So the final piece, I'm just thinking through the process, the final piece is they still do bound issues for certain subscribers. So for that piece, because we're still holding everything in Documentum, we can come back and basically just stamp on some page numbering onto the pages. So you've got all your issue page numbering done. So that's the system in a nutshell. There's a lot of details and you can ask questions about that afterwards. What are the benefits? Obviously it's a very fast workflow when you've got automatic composition, because you're not waiting on someone to go to their keyboard in India and start building your pages. The system composition time for an average journal article is probably under half a minute. So the overall benefit, which we thought was quite astounding, is they were able to get an article, once it was peer reviewed, they were able to get it on the web in 7 hours using this system. Now that's obviously best case, because there was no corrections and the author happened to be sitting at their desk and sort of gave it the green tick and they're able to go through the rest of the process. But we thought that was quite amazing. The average time, I believe, is something within 3 to 5 days, which is obviously pretty cool, even at a worst case. So that the speed is obviously really cool. The other really cool thing is they're relying on their vendors a lot more, which for those of you involved in any serious journal publishing realise there's a lot of expense associated with that. So they actually got ROI in the first year and are now just in the black. So that was fantastic. And actually they found the quality is up. They get much less corrections. They get much less issues after publication. Because it's a full automated system, everything is a known quantity. If we find a problem, we fix it, it never happens again. So having been in place for, I think, after about 6 months, we saw, we're doing gradual improvements, doing, I think, monthly releases. So we're seeing gradual improvement, and they're at the point now where they get 92% automation. So that's, of all the articles that you look at, 92% of those do not need to go for any manual intervention after the XML point.
Fantastic. Any of our panelists would like to rebound on that? Do they have experiences? Byron?
So yeah, a question that I would have, Gareth, is just, I know you're a consultant, you work for a group that comes in and helps publishers implement these sorts of tools and so forth. But as a supplier to the industry that has many of the same processes in our own systems, and for which we can sort of spread out or amortize the cost and update and constant revision, and we're talking about like updated tools and new technologies and new processes. Do you have specific recommendations for publishers who begin to use these tools internally and therefore have to face some of the obsolescence issues that they might have on an ongoing basis? Yeah, they got 92% turnaround or schedule fidelity and automation within the page makeup right now. How long does that last? How much update does it require? What's the overall investment over a period of, say, 5 years? I have, just to give you some context, I've seen publishers who have had in-house systems and who have decided over time to abandon those sorts of things simply because they're costly to maintain, they require a great deal of expertise, and often will put you outside the level of expertise that outside suppliers can provide to you because you've sort of put the suppliers at the fringe rather than at the core.
That's a lot of questions, but I think I know where you're coming from. And in fact, the ACS had already done the same thing a number of times that you alluded to. So they started out, I think, in the 1960s and built their own system in PL1 assembler on some sort of mainframe that did all the text typesetting. They'd glue in the figures and stuff like that. They also then tried again with Xi Enterprise XPP in, I think, late 80s. Similar sort of problem. So like, it's a great question. Why would that not happen this time around? I think what we've got to the point now is because they'd failed a number of times, there's a lot of lessons learned, and back then there was a lot of technology limitations as well. So I think that why this system is going to have more longevity. Obviously, nothing lasts forever, but I think it's going to have more longevity because it's a very, very rich system and very technologically advanced. So there is an ongoing maintenance associated with any software. So I guess it's on them to, like you say, amortize that over years. And I don't have any spreadsheet figures to sort of tell you how the business side of that works, but yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Sure. Does anybody in the audience have a question for Gareth? Linda, do you have a mic? There's no mic.
My question was about, I believe you mentioned that there's a step at which after article acceptance, the manuscript goes to India for conversion. Do you have any thoughts about how to do away with that step and how to make the conversion?
Okay, just for the benefit of everyone, the question is about removing one more step. There is a step where the manuscript does go to India, and how could we remove that?
Right, so how can we automate Word to XML? Yeah, we've got a one-click tool for that. I'll tell you what, I'd be the richest man alive if that was true. No, that's still a very difficult thing to do because you're obviously trying to make, it's like signal to noise, right? You're trying to get a signal out of all this noise. It's a very difficult thing indeed, which is why I think, you know, offshore vendors in particular are still a really good way to get that done on any sort of serious basis. And each vendor actually has their own tooling to help assist with that process. Like Byron pointed out, they invest a lot in their internal tools to be able to keep up with the trends here. I wish I had a better answer for you. Does that help though?
Okay. Just one from Gary.
Yeah, just a comment. I remember that signal from noise, getting something out of Word. Just a comment that I think word processors have a lot to answer for. That the root of all evil is word processors.
They should be burnt at the stake.
Once you're in a word processor, that's why people like us make money out of cleaning up the junk that goes into word processors.
Yeah, that's a good comment. I personally, my viewpoint is on this topic, I think it's quite salient at the moment. I think a lot of people are interested in it, is how do we get away with all this hassle? I see that, you know, obviously everyone's noticed that with digital, everyone's doing digital, but the shift is really focusing to digital as a primary product, right? And I know some journals are already there, and a lot of people are shifting that way. At that point, it kind of makes sense to use what it's digital based on. Most of it's based on HTML, so and I was talking with some people at this conference who probably resonate with this as well, is everyone's going through all this hassle of getting XML. I think probably we'll start to see people using HTML, if they're especially not already doing XML, they start using HTML first. Then that opens up the door to, you know, allowing authors to have systems whereby you have an online platform to do your manuscripts. Maybe you copy paste out of your Word document. Maybe it's a nice enough platform that people want to use. It's like Google Docs, you know, you can start writing, come back later. All that sort of stuff, and behind the scenes it's just the HTML that's going to feed the rest of the processes. So I'd keep your eyes peeled for that as well.
All right, lovely. I also had a conversation with Byron a few weeks ago on the phone, and I was explaining the premise of the conversation, and he said, yes, you're right. I mean, all the information and the content is available on the net. It's usable, it's searchable. You know, in short, it does the job. So, now, I wanted to know in what you've been doing in the past few years, where are the biggest gaps, and where would you want to see customers or publishers push their investment dollars to kind of not react so much to technology, but kind of take a leading edge?
I think in your opening comments, Patrick, you mentioned that journals in particular in the scholarly space, they had early online requirements. Researchers need to have this information for their own work purposes, for their research and continuing to build on others' research. And so what we saw, I think, in the early days of electronic publishing and some of these online processes, especially as storage increased and got cheaper and bandwidth increased for being able to transmit these things over large distances very quickly. You know, the early days of my career, in 1996 and 97, I worked for Ovid Technologies. Many of you know them now as a division of Wolters Kluwer Medical Research. They were one of the pioneers in bringing research journals online, and especially in medicine. And so my first job as a business development person for Ovid Technologies back in those days was what we called at the time the Web Paygo product. And what that was online, browser-based journals delivery in full text with full-color images, which previously had been unheard of. You had to either get it in print through your medical reference library or whatever, or in some cases, if you had access to a big special library in your institution, school, hospital, whatever, you would go to the reference library, and they would search their stacks of CDs. Some of you in the room will probably remember those stackable CD jukeboxes or whatever they were, where you would have a 25 CD mega database like Cinol or Medline or those sorts of things. Excuse me. That was the way you got your information. And of course, bandwidth, storage, the accessibility to broadband and internet use worldwide led to changes that now result in, most journal product going online first, online early, becoming part of the global corpus of research content. And it's very interesting. So I wouldn't go so far as to say that there's complacency within this industry, but there is certainly some comfort level with online product and with the searches that go on and the delivery of that content. And I would suggest that, we as scholarly publishers in this industry have maybe sat on our hands a little too long as it comes to looking at and adopting new technologies. And so my recommendations, and I've got some specific things that I would recommend to the group. I'd be happy to send you some of these things after this session if you're interested in having more detail on them. In terms of addressing obsolescence within your own systems, processes, deliverables, how do you keep it fresh and so forth? And the first is to just recognize that obsolescence is a necessary part of the process. Things age, they change. People are no different. Processes, companies, deliverables, markets, customers. And you should simply plan for that. So the first step is to plan for obsolescence. Count on it. Understand that if you don't see things that are aging in your process that need to be updated, you probably should be. You're not paying close enough attention. So plan for obsolescence to begin with and put a process around it. The second would be to know your own particular content. A technology publisher, for example, has vastly different requirements than a medical publisher might. Technology publishers in the ST part of the STM have heavy equations, lots of data materials and charts and graphs and things that can be mashed together and used in various ways. The technology that's applied to that type of content is much different than that might be used for high color, critical color imaging. The third thing would be to maintain and hire good technical staff if you're going to have internal processes, or find the best suppliers that you can work with. Talk to your colleagues in your particular area of interest and get the suppliers that can handle the requirements. Consult with them, challenge them, make them do what it is that you need them to do. Hold them to account. The next one would be, as you plan for obsolescence, make sure you set aside some budget in terms of staff time, staff money. We all hear things like Google and their 20% time, and how interesting that is, that some of the initiatives that come out of the employees having some wherewithal to make their own decisions over what they'll invest their research and their interest time in. Do that on your own staff. Set aside that budget and the time associated with it so that you understand change is happening and we're going to address it. The next thing would be to start small and grow from there. Take one of your core products or a portion of your core product that you think could really benefit from a new technology like HTML5, where you're combining the formatting and the rendering and the reflowability of the content, and do an experiment. Determine either amongst yourself or in consultation with your colleagues in the industry or your suppliers, what do you want to have as an outcome, and then proceed in a very small way. So don't invest in the whole thing before you prove the concept, essentially. From there, once you do begin to get good positive feedback on what's happening within those new technology initiatives, be prepared to get behind it quickly. Because if you've figured out something that's really working for your particular area, we all compete in this room for many of the same authors and users and customers, you will be quickly left behind. And don't figure that you're the only one who's sort of looking at and considering these things. And then rinse and repeat. You listen, adjust your processes, and repeat those things as necessary throughout your whole process and your whole program. Just basically remember, this is necessary. Change is necessary. Adjustment and renewal are necessary. Don't get tired because you went from SGML to XML, and now you're going online early, and there's a new peer review system and so forth. These things are necessary, and they're good. Be excited about it, and I think that will help you greatly.
Lovely. Do you have any specific examples of something that was done recently for journals?
What we're seeing is particular to HTML5, and I think a lot of people in this room are probably also experimenting with EPUB 3 deliverables just because of the reflowability and the multiple devices that you can serve all from the same format. HTML5 for standards has become more and more popular for us within the scholarly community, where you're taking what was previously pretty static material and you're adding navigation tools within the markup itself so that they don't need to be browser-based. They're not device-specific. It doesn't take a great deal of extra time. If you have a good XML process in place, you can typically derive things like HTML5 and apply some style sheets in EPUB 3 from that common pure XML file, as Kaveh might call it. So, yeah, and there's some other things that are going on. What I would say is that a lot of publishers are waiting to see what the other publishers do. And to my original point, plan for obsolescence. Don't wait for your market to get ahead of you before you try to catch up with it. We all know some of the progressive scholarly publishers that are out there in the market, those that you look at and you think, wow, they're really sort of on the cutting edge. Nature Publishing Group comes to mind. Some of the divisions of Elsevier.
They've committed some budgets and they've gone for it, right? You can't.
Yeah, but they have pushed the envelope, even when it wasn't comfortable to push the envelope in many cases. And the rest of the industry has benefited, but not as much as Nature has.
Any panelists for a comment? Retort?
I thought that was good, actually. Very interesting topic, obviously. You already asked the one I thought of first, which is any anecdotes to share, so that was really good. You got me thinking, though, about, this experimentation stuff is obviously critical, and I'm wondering, some of the pressures like open access and stuff at the moment are forcing people to have to experiment. So I wonder if you had anything to share, sort of from the open access angle, which I know is quite important.
Yeah, we work with some core society journal publishers who are, dipping their toe into the open access pool, so to speak. And of course, we know the PLOS model and some of these other all open access journals and publishers that have done very well in the author pays model. Again, I think it's a situation where you determine, what you want to accomplish. What do you think the outcome is going to be from introducing open access? Is it just a different way of deriving the same revenue? Or is it really a fundamental shift in the way that you think about your own publications? Are you going to fully support open access, essentially, or are you going to say you're supporting open access? And there's a difference. There's a huge competition within most journal publishers for who pays for what. How are those budgets assigned? How do we go about holding rights to the materials that we publish in scholarly? And I guess my recommendation would be, if you're going to go in the direction of open access, don't be afraid of it, and don't compete with yourself over it. Go there.
Yeah, good answer, thank you.
Someone in the audience, yes?
I had a quick question about this issue of XML and HTML. I think probably a lot of us who move to an XML workflow, so we thought, that's great, now we don't have to do anything for 100 years. And this notion that actually you might go to an HTML workflow, and I can see that makes a lot of sense, but for those of us in the biomedical sciences, the people kind of like calling the shots is really PubMed and deposition in XML, and I wonder how you see that. Do you think that is a decision that they may ultimately change to deposition in HTML rather than XML and DNA HTTP, or do you think that kind of XML will just be another output we have to have from our HTML?
What I can say, first of all, is that I hope there's an HTML6 and an HTML7 and an HTML8, mainly because I'm a services provider, and my company offers data conversion services. And so in some cases in my history, I have been literally paid, and Gurvinder's laughing a little here to my left because we worked together for many years. We have been paid multiple times to convert the same content for the same publisher. And in some cases, when the publisher themselves went about making global changes to the content within their own production systems, got paid to clean it up again for them and resupply it, after they sort of went in and mucked it up a little and had to make some changes. So as it comes to XML versus HTML, I think most people in the room here are fairly familiar with the differences between those things, XML being content-based markup. So you're actually looking at each particular piece of the content, and you're saying in a way that a machine can understand, this is the author's first name and last name, this is the affiliation, and so forth, all the way through, hopefully in a very granular way throughout your references, so that those individual components of references can be linked to and from other articles that are cited. HTML, at least in its original iteration, was much more of a format-based markup. You want this word to flash, you want this part to be in italic, you want this to be blue or that to be black, you want it to render a single column, double column, whatever. The promise of HTML5 is not to supplant XML necessarily. You still need that good, highly granular content markup. But it is to expand upon that, to add extra layers of structure to the content itself, so that you control the format at the point of markup rather than the browser or the device controlling the format of it at the point of delivery and consumption. I don't know if that directly answers your question, but
So what you're saying is that XML is not going away.
that's right.
We're not going to have completely HTML stuff with workflow. We're going to have XML.
Yeah, that's right. And I think XML, and there may be some suppliers on the panel that would differ in their opinions on this, I think XML is actually fairly mature and fairly complete, and when it's done properly and completely, can add a great deal of value to your content regardless of what you do with it downstream. It's making sure that you have a process in place that adequately accounts for every element of a piece of content, whether it's an article or a chapter or whatever it is, and make sure that the machine can both read and take full advantage of delivering those particular components in different ways to different audiences. So the XML itself is still core, and as a supplier in this industry, we still see that as being a big-time part and parcel of our core production systems that exist on behalf of publishers. It's the delivery mechanisms and the additional processing and output of that same XML file that are beginning to differ and become much more sophisticated at the back end.
Thank you. I think Daniel, who's a user experience specialist, won't agree with the way you like to format with blinking yellow and italics everywhere. So, but Daniel has been pioneering user experience initiatives in scholarly publishing over the past few years. And so, is the industry seeing more investments, and where are you seeing these investments maximizing impact for our readers and for our researchers?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think the industry has definitely seen a lot of investment. I think that a lot of us are sold that the future is XML-based technologies. By the way, blinking is style and not content. It would be marked up in a completely different language. And yellow.
CSS.
What's kind of interesting about working at Wiley is that we represent so many different societies, and we do have a lot of different publishing workflows, even though we tried to consolidate to several core systems. Getting everybody on board is sort of an interesting challenge, from our editors and our production managers all the way down to our end users who are driving that demand. And so what was really interesting to me when I started at Wiley is we did a usability test where we were prototyping something really interesting in the HTML article. And time and time and time again, every participant in that study went for that little PDF link instead of the HTML link. And our analytics backed that up. It was about 75% back in 2010 of users who were given the option between the PDF and the HTML went for the PDF because that just looked nice and it was laid out the way that they expected it and it delivered on all the promises that they wanted, which was a manuscript the way that the author intended. And so with those numbers in our usage stats, it's actually kind of hard to convince everybody that the investment in HTML is worth it. But our product managers are definitely behind it, and we've been making a lot of investment internally in the presentation of the HTML, in delivering tools that help researchers accept and adapt our HTML based front-end technologies, from a forthcoming responsive design that will work on all devices, to eliminating some barriers to institutional access when they're on the go with their mobile devices, to our mobile apps that are based on our HTML, not our PDF, and really pushing the investment there. And so the numbers have dropped just naturally with that investment, and we expect when we launch the responsive HTML, which is also changing the way that users are given the options to, that number will drop even further. Other publishers have been investing in this as well, such as Elsevier with their article of the future, PubMed Central's PubReader, PLOS, eLife, all moving towards XML first. So we realize that we will be obsolete, and getting everybody on board has so far been working. So my charge has really been to get readership to demand those technologies. We're also banking on XML as a technology that is extensible, so that as new standards come out and new ways of adding semantic enrichment to our content come out, that we reduce the barrier to converting our content and to enriching our content that way. So again, the investment in XML is definitely hinging on that. Let's see. We're also looking about moving past HTML and moving past XML and really extending that online experience, because the manuscript is really just the manuscript. It's just a story that the researchers told. So a series of paragraphs, a series of figures. And probably our biggest barrier today, and we've seen it with a lot of other publishers too, is that anything that doesn't fit in that manuscript usually gets stuffed into supporting information or into a link that may atrophy and is hard to consider part of the version of record, something that will work in the future and something that will be able to upconvert time and time again. And so looking for standards and new ways of marking up things that are not quite structured content, like definitions of functionality, lab protocols, entire data sets of clinical research, has also been where we're kind of trying to take the company in the future to preempt obsolescence.
Mm-hmm. Yesterday I was at the RWD design session, and as you bring responsive design to very little devices, there's a number of information that a certain number of journals in chemistry or in math won't be able to render properly. So how have you worked around that, or what are the decisions that you've taken?
Well, one guiding principle has been that minimum viable product. So we are launching with some of those things unaddressed, totally admittedly. We've been for a while now demanding MathML when we have things like formulas in our full text. That's going to help a lot with the rendering at a small screen, because then you don't start to lose pixel data as figures are scaled down. We are looking towards responsive figures. I am hoping that by showing that the readership has been moving towards more mobile devices and more small screens, that we will be able to drive more demand in marking up things that have traditionally been in figures but represent a lot of data as more semantic content, so that way we can then focus on the front-end technologies that render them and solve the problems in different ways, because that is really what we do with responsive design. We say, at this breakpoint, what is the best way to produce this information or present this information? So a large table that somebody a typesetter really QA'd in our 650 pixel wide desktop column won't render at the small screen, and so we need to say, okay, well, at least that is tabular data, so we can solve that by understanding what it represents and providing a table viewer for the small screen. So yeah,
which makes it complicated, expensive, and
sure, but that's product development. It's
Yeah.
a cycle. So we build, we learn what we're doing wrong, and we revise and we do it again. And so, like I said, what we're launching in November is better than what we're launching now. At least the content will be readable. At least some of our figures will be small screen ready. At least some of our video is in MP4 and will work with most devices. But then at the same time, our customers then will be demanding additional enrichment, and we're going to be able to demonstrate the benefit of the upfront investment.
For sure. Any panelists? Gurvinder?
I can completely agree regarding PDF. I mean, it's electronic format, but it's really a replica of the print page. So I was just wondering, I mean, the users are getting more and more demanding, so they kind of more pushing the publisher in terms of what they want and how they want it. Do you think, as you work in the HTML solution, providing them, some flexibility in terms of, rather than having one style sheet the way you are producing it, let them decide, you give them the choice, and let them change the look and feel of the page they're looking at, which, do you think that can drive better usage of HTML versus PDF?
I think that is some of it. I have to say that is what we've observed in the lab is when we spend a lot of time making sure that the HTML content is typeset to look convincing, to look like it was intentionally typeset and not just a dump of content that used to be in a PDF and is vaguely a remnant of it. I think a lot of users are then convinced that this will be okay. That kind of reinforces their perception that the HTML is modern and that we've been paying attention and that what they're getting is what the author intended. So in a way, paying careful attention to the presentation of the content, actually very important. We have experimented with a few different tools. If anybody's used anything like Instapaper readability, you've probably, or Kindle, you've had the ability to change things like the color, the font, the column width. In the lab, that hasn't really gotten a lot of buy-in. And that's not something you can do with the PDF today either, although, again, I'm looking towards ways of enriching and making that experience better. We haven't seen a ton of that, other than font size, because we have a lot of researchers who don't like to read tiny text, and a lot of publishers still out there, I'm not going to name names, have 12-point text on their website. We do too. We're going for 16 in November. But I don't think that's really the driving reason why our users reject the HTML. It's not the primary reason why. The primary reason is they want a file format that they can store, highlight, note, that works in their existing workflow, that they can add to bibliography, a file, a folder with files in it, that they can share freely, that they know that they will be able to access from home and from anywhere. So we're also trying to just solve that problem in the larger space by partnering with companies like ReadCube for online content collection, but then driving people back to the website. And there's also, I think, just some hesitance in using the HTML, again, because we've done such a I think a poor job historically of making it look like a convincing and good reading experience. So as we layer in tools like a side-by-side reference viewer that make it so much better than the PDF, not having to jump down in a 180-page paper and then back up, that we will be shifting some behaviors. It's going to be a long-term strategy, though. This isn't going to change overnight.
I had a follow-up question on that, Danielle. I hear a lot from society journal publishers about the version of record. What is it that Wiley considers to be the version of record? Is it the XML, the PDF, the HTML, or some derivative of those things?
It is actually all of those things, interestingly enough. Although, when you cite one of our articles, you are citing our DOI. So technically, we like people to cite the online version of record. The PDF is there, but it is also subject to things like retractions, revisions, commentary that you wouldn't get if you just took that piece of paper and brought it offline and never checked in on it again. So we prefer that our researchers consider the digital version, the version of record. But I think once it's online, we're confident enough that both are citable and both are solid enough that both are considered a scholarly version of record.
So essentially, as long as it's served from within Wiley's repository,
Yeah.
you you consider that the digital version of record, regardless of format?
Yes. As of right now. When we move to a future of putting accepted articles online before they're even peer-reviewed, which we haven't even talked about yet, but once we're there, that, obviously that won't necessarily be the version of record, but anything that has gone through peer review, even before it's typeset, our accepted articles are considered version of record.
Lovely. Anyone from the audience have a question for Daniel? Please.
Hi.
I think I like what you're saying about making the online experience more engaging, and hopefully it will eventually outpace PDF in terms of where people read. I think there are a lot of advantages to that. And I was just curious how that fits in with the file format question, XML, HTML. And I think that when you're getting into the areas you're talking about, like having the side viewer for references or whatever else you're doing to remix the content right on the screen to make it a better viewing experience. I was curious if you think that XML gives you more benefits for being able to rearrange those pieces from a UX perspective, or whether other technologies could be leveraged for that, or have you given that much thought?
Well,
I'll just summarize so
sure.
that everybody gets it. Whether enhancing the experience of the user is better served by the XML format and the XML underlying technology, or the other technologies that would serve that better.
Both. So MathML is now part of the HTML5 recommendation, or whatever we're calling it. So in that regard, one of the things that we had considered XML that wasn't part of HTML is now mature enough that it's been adopted, that modern browsers are working on rendering it, that there are libraries like MathJax that kind of take it to the next step. We like to do all of our semantic enrichment in the XML because transforming the XML into whatever the newest front-end standard is not that hard for us. The transformation from one DTD to another is relatively trivial if everything's marked up correctly. The real challenge is going back through the content and saying, we didn't mark this up, or we didn't have any enrichment here, and now we want it. Or looking at file formats and having to do mass conversion of them, which takes a lot more power than on-the-fly XSL. So the XML is really our storage format more than anything else, and HTML5 is just a subset of that, and as it transforms, I think we'll be ready for it, at least for keeping things the way that they are today. Extending them, that's where we're trying to answer the questions now of where is the future, what other types of content can be marked up. Things like chemicals in a chemistry paper. Right now, we get mol files from ChemDraw, but what can we do when we're storing or when we're accepting a manuscript to say, hey, can you give us maybe a CAS ID or an INCHI key or something like that, so that way we can calculate, that we can get a figure automatically generated at many different sizes, and that we can calculate physical properties and things like that. So we're trying to preempt by classifying the types of content that we really focus on publishing.
Okay, lovely. So we'll take it at the end. I just. Is it a short question? Is it a short answer? Come on, go ahead. We'll give you a short answer. Go ahead.
Yes.
Maybe Laura can do that later.
Yeah.
Laura, will you be able to answer that later when we come to you? Will you touch on
I
that?
can certainly hint at the complexity of the answer.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. I actually can't, because I am mostly focused on end user engagement, and sometimes that means ignoring the problem and looking towards the future. But I will say that we are moving towards .cms at least being our web content management system. As far as our XML article content management systems, I will push that question off.
Okay. So everybody's got many devices. Mobile technology is as prevalent as it's ever been, and the tablets have come to take the world by storm. And I felt that it's a good it's a good format or a form factor for journals. And so, Gurvinder, what are the kind of initiatives your company is essentially focused on mobile technology and tablet applications? So tell us a bit more of what you've been seeing and doing in that space.
Sure, Patrick. I mean, we've seen a lot of presentations in the last few days here in terms of a lot of stats, in terms of you seeing the increased usage of the mobile devices. So there's a trend you see in terms of the usage is increasing, but it's not necessarily. It was interesting to see yesterday the usage is through a mobile app. It could be. It's from the device. It's a mobile device, and it could be through the browsers. That how the users are accessing the content. But there's definitely a trend where users are really demanding in terms of having that access available. As we were just saying in terms of this HTML versus PDF and how the usage is driving what Daniel is doing. It almost seems like it's becoming more individual, and the individual is, or individualization rather, and their mobility is driving whether it's just a casual person who's looking for this content or it's actually a researcher. And the publishers have to cater to make sure that the content is available on all formats, whether in terms of whether it's web or it's mobile. And mobile means it's Apple, it's Android, and it's Windows, and all the new formats which are coming out. So it's very interesting to see the trending, increasing very rapidly. And then the whole new challenge we just saw earlier today, native versus HTML5. HTML5 is being talked about a lot. When you are simply, it's accessing content, it works very well. HTML5 does a very good job. It's come a long way from where it is. But we talk about UI, UX, or user experience, which is critical. Like in this case, why would they go for PDF instead of HTML when HTML has so much more interactivity? And the native that's what it drives it. The more the user works on the device and plays with it, that's driving the interactivity of that particular app or application. And what I think the trend we've seen is, and that's what I was referring to my question to Daniel earlier, that especially a mobile device, the user is very unforgiving as compared to what they were on the desktop. And so they say, if I want to continue a certain way, if I want to be able to change the format in terms of font size or the background color, you have to provide that. If you don't provide it, they just simply delete the application and never go back to it. So it's becoming very, very demanding. It's for publishers to really understand that and come back with, see what they should be doing, in what format they should be driving it. And it was interesting, one discussion we were having with Laura here, a journal for Bell Labs, BLTJ for Wiley. And a lot of discussion happened what format we should go with. And Wiley was able to actually make the decision, like, why not we experiment with both? And we'll do it in parallel. So we did the UI UX design, in terms of what the journal has and how the content should be accessed and everything. And then we did a parallel development, a native app, for both iPhone and iPad. And then in parallel, we also built the same app using HTML5. And interestingly, again, the other challenge is, obviously, access to the content, where this app is sitting, App Store versus a web app, which is difficult to find. And it's challenging. And so we experimented another thing where, for Bell Labs, because it was mostly to, the people there who can access the content more, and maybe Laura can talk to that a little bit more. So we had Bell Labs take an enterprise account, which meant that the app was actually sitting on their own servers and then being accessed from there. So there's no Apple in the circle. We didn't have to worry about whole subscription APIs and whether or not users are looking for how to register and everything. So the only thing is, like, is it that possible for everybody to do? Like every society can have an enterprise account, and that's how the members are getting access to the app. I have talked about it. I mean, it is within Apple's guidelines that works, because in a way, all those members are associated with a particular society. In case of publishers, I don't know whether that will work the same way or not, because in that case, you're actually having users come and subscribe to the content and do it. But I think the key is the usage, is increasing. The users are more and more demanding, being on the go, and they want the content to be accessible on the mobile devices. And we need to figure out what's the best way. And the only way is to experiment. If you try different things, only then you can figure out what is the better format, what platform works better for you. Another big challenge which sometimes gets unnoticed is that we're dealing with still a lot of legacy systems in terms of the content where it is hosted right now. And those systems are being built around delivery on the web, where you use a browser and access the content. You can browse the HTML, you can browse the PDF and everything, but it's not meant for downloading that content. And so as you work towards a mobile platform, and again here, offline is a big requirement. Those APIs which are there right now, they're not meant for download. The downloaded content is not built into the systems right now. So many times we have worked with where we ended up, and that's happened with Wiley, like rather than deal with InterScience and APIs and everything, we ended up building a parallel system, so we hosted the content so we can actually build the API accordingly. But many places where we are going in, we find after we work on the app and that certain things are not coming the right way, and it's more connected with the API, the backend, which are sometimes don't get noticed. So most of these apps are connected apps, right? So front end, in a way, as Steve Jobs said, the 60% is the UI UX. That's the critical part. You focus on the user experience, and you do that. But to make the app work continuously and deliver content on an ongoing basis, the backend becomes much more critical. Planning the backend, the architecture of the backend is very, very important. As the content is getting delivered, the user does not want to, they press on an issue, they get the TOC, they press on an article, they want to wait for the article to download. And the ability to be background downloading and allowing them to be able to do something else while the content is getting downloaded, it becomes very, very critical. And one other thing, I'll share, the challenge, from a publisher perspective again. So a lot of times we are creating a template. You do one template, and then you're using the template and to replicate across 100 of journals that you may have. Now, the process of taking a code base that you have now templated out and then generating it and using the same code base, changing things like society logos or journal covers and things like that, and generating another app for that, it's a manual process. You have to redo that, you change the assets and everything, and then on top of that, the whole submission process to Apple Store or Google, it is very time consuming because you have a set of metadata you have to go through, put it out there, and then you submit the binaries. That whole process, and again, going back to what Gareth was saying, I was thinking I've always been I started in Jones World and always been a big believer of technology and automation and improvement in processes on ongoing basis as technology changes. So even in mobile, I think there is a need for more automation as we are used to, where you have a code base and you can automate in terms of collection of, when the editor goes and collects all the assets needed to build an app, and then automate the process of marrying those assets with the code base and generating an app, and then ability to then upload it directly to the respective source. So we did a POC with Springer and completely automating it, and we have brought it down to building an app really with an editor just pressing a button on the website and generating it completely like in an hour. The whole app gets done as long as the template is done. So really automation is an ongoing thing, especially in journals. I really believe that journals are always ahead of books, and the reason why I think publishers like to experiment, because there was the time to market issue, and I think as Patrick you said, I believe journals got behind, and there's a huge scope in terms of using automation, using mobile, in complete process to make sure that the user can get the content as and when they needed it.
All right, that's fantastic. I'm going to take a question from the audience. I'm going to bypass the panel because I want to meet my deadlines. Anybody from the audience? Yes, sir.
Talking about pushing data out, like the apps, having the data there.
I'll repeat it. I'll try and understand it and repeat it.
Short. Do you think there's going to be a point where it's like, okay, I'm a publisher, here's the content. It's going to be near a little personal cloud. There's some kind of communication back with the publisher to make sure it's still the version of record and it hasn't changed. And I don't care what device it is. I mean, it's a little bit like responsive design. In certain ways, I feel like that's where it's obviously going.
So,
what do you think?
So the question is, in the future, will publishers basically let you handle their content, have trust so that you can handle their content, and that it would be accessible from any device, from anywhere, as long as I'm able to identify against the content as being able to read it or being allowed to read it, will I have a copy of it? Will it stream to me?
I think the key is what we were talking earlier, XML. So as long as the process of generating an XML is correct, you're tagging everything correctly, delivery to any of these platforms, that's an automated process. You're just parsing the content, parsing the XML, and delivering in HTML or whatever format that may be. So as long as the XML is done correctly, and then each of these scripts that's automating the process, I think that's the key. If that happens right, you don't have to worry about the transformation or something getting dropped out and everything. Obviously, you have to test those engines, individual engines. I think that's where like what Gareth is talking about, the technology and automation is very, very important. And you test all those things, and then make sure that every time the transformation happens, nothing is getting dropped out.
But the question is really like you're talking about an app downloading it. I mean, it's going to get to a point. It's not an app. It's I have access to this content. I want it here. I want it on my personal cloud. So whether I'm looking at it on a TV or a device, any other device,
Right.
it's just there.
Exactly. But so, like for instance, we're working on a lot of solutions where it's called multi-screen. So the user is not based on just this device. We're looking at parallelly, like it's a whole family. Somebody has Android device, somebody has iOS, and then they also have the TV. So the content is also getting delivered through the set-top boxes. So I think the delivery of content to your personal cloud or wherever it is coming through that transformation. So when any device makes a call, that tells, this is me, I'm an iOS device, I'm an Android device, or I'm a set-top box. And the backend then actually gives you the content the way that device can handle it, right? So that can be managed through that particular, that's what I said, the engine transformation is happening from the backend, and the backend becomes much more critical in terms of managing your personal cloud or wherever the content is going.
That is why Wiley is investing in things like apps, that really anybody could take a PDF and go and put it on their reading device, that for us to then have a container app that reports back to our usage statistics, that's really strategic for us. So as we can determine the channels that users demand that content and provide network-based solutions as opposed to Mendeley or Dropbox or whatever, and that is where our partnership with ReadCube is strategic too, is maintaining that relationship with customers and being able to do things like content marketing and counter compliance and things like that.
All right. So now we'll be excited to hear from Laura how all of this translates from a marketing perspective. How is it going to change the life of the people that are subscribing to your journals, and how is the Wiley Online Library going to embody all of this?
Well, yes, I am in marketing, and I don't know that it's going to change. I can't imagine the subscribers' lives being changed because they're changing our lives. I'm in professional development, and although all of my content is on Wiley Online Library, and I'm charged to make sure that it is up to the standard of any document that is on Wiley Online Library, we were faced with overwhelming demand from our partners such as Alcatel-Lucent, which is the Bell Labs Technical Journal partner, from readership of some of our other publications, that they wanted the content extraordinarily faster than our current workflow systems were capable of delivering it. And there was also a secondary audience that was interested, although they had the rights and access to Wiley Online Library, they simply wanted to access it in some sort of on-the-fly HTML kind of environment. So we have 30 portal-type websites that represent 30 of our titles that had started out, and some of them still are, they started out as marketing sites, and they were really just designed to help the discoverability of these smaller niche publications through SEO, through the editor, blogging occasionally on it, and these sites were all managed by marketing. But as we were faced with a lot of pressure to have, portable accessibility of the content for these titles specifically, we decided, well, why not offer as a service to the subscribers that they can also access the content on this site, in addition to Wiley Online Library, in addition to the print, in addition to, even a combined institutional access. the trouble is that if you say to yourself, okay, let's add yet another layer onto our workflow, whereby we're creating an HTML version of the product, and you're asking your production team to QC yet another version of it. And we decided to reverse that entirely. And what we did is we made the web-based version the primary and first place where the product starts to become put together. And it's the editor. We took a marketing site, and working with a developer, we made that marketing site what we'd like to say it's replacing the word processing program that the editor was using, but it's in a sense the content management point of departure for the product. And we, as it goes into this content management system, the editor is working with our production team. It's all cloud-based. It can be accessed by any member of the team, including external editors that are not within the Wiley employee structure, but who have rights to access their own content. They can get in, they can play with it anytime. There's notification process that then flows right into the workflow that results in what we're calling the version of record, results in the file that becomes the Wiley Online Library version and the print version, but at the same time it also became this web version that is much more fluid and portable and bits and pieces of the article. So it was exciting, and yet as we approach this, which we started in 2010, we obviously it wasn't a matter of systems or a matter of learning technology. It was actually a matter of learning new relationships with each other. And now that we're well into it, there's been an extraordinary amount of growth in communication between marketing and editorial, and particularly between marketing and production. We almost feel like we can mirror. I mean, we have a greater understanding of each other's needs and why things have to happen the way they have to happen. And editorial is really feeling an ownership of how the end product looks, because they are the ones that are marking up the text and based on the tool that we've given them. And the turnaround time can be extraordinarily quick. We can have something, if it's not peer-reviewed, we can actually see something publish within 2 or 3 hours of the final proofing of it through the production team and the editor's sign off. So I don't know that is applicable to a lot of the other things, and that's when we turned to Gurvinder and the Bell Labs Technical Journal app, where that particular process, it's supported. It fits into the main workflow, but we've then turned to his team to help make it applicable to the mobile device. So.
And this tool that you've provided for collaboration, that's a tool you developed internally, or that's a platform you adopted?
It was a vendor's tool, but we had a lot of say in the development of it. And it's a tool, it's Aztec out of Chicago. They're a web design firm. And they had partnered with us when it was simply a marketing tool. And when we came to them and said, we need to turn these marketing sites into actual content that is up to Wiley's standards, and that means it's going to have a relationship with InDesign, they worked very closely with our production team and modified this Webiny, which is the cloud tool, to anything we needed, and they continue to do that. And that the second lesson I think we all learned is that it's never finished. There's always a chance that you can improve the tool that everybody's working with, and indeed, huge amounts of improvement came to it when the editors came on board, because they started contributing a great bit of feedback.
Lovely. Any questions from the panel?
Hello, me again. I found it all very interesting, and I'm quite interested in this online collaboration thing as well. I think it's a brilliant idea. And then I got thinking to the other question I asked, and it occurs to me that, again on this open access topic, if you've got gold open access titles, and at the moment the authors are like, they'll just give you the manuscript whichever which way they feel like doing it. But you could incentivize them with an online collaboration platform like this, right? To say, if you have to pay me X amount or it's X minus whatever if you decide to use my manuscript platform. I was wondering if you guys had thought of that or experienced with any of that, or wanted to talk to that.
I think I will take that into account, because that sounds like a good revenue stream. So I
That's
would...
a very reasonable commission.
I'm thinking now of, say, the editor that, you know, has been asked to use an online collaboration tool and perhaps willfully doesn't use it, or simply, and we've actually encountered that, an editor that was very resistant to this idea. And I had suggested, can we hire somebody to support him on that? We resolved it a different way, but it seems to me that if it's understood that the end result reflects on everybody involved, but primarily the author, I think the author would be incredibly incentivized to make sure that it's done properly. So.
Thank you.
So, Kaveh, I know you've been this strong advocate of XML. Publishers should stop at XML, and content transformation should be in the hand of the user, of the person that's consuming the information. So, how do you see that fitting in everything that you've heard today?
Well, the gentleman in the front here, I think in one sentence said what I was going to say. I almost feel I should just say goodbye now, but I'll continue and elaborate. Firstly, regarding XML and HTML5, which Byron mentioned, that's a very good point, and I think HTML5. Let's talk about them interchangeably, so there's not enough time to talk about each one. Let's talk about structured data, which they both are. Let me start by asking if anyone knows. There's a typeface called Open Dyslexic. Anyone heard of it apart from those I've told about this conference? No one's heard of it?
One.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. Yes, you have. Wonderful, Edward. There's a typeface called Open Dyslexic. Dyslexic people have a problem with letters that are vertically symmetric, like D and H. As they read, they sort of rotate in their heads. They have to go back and double take. And someone thought, hang on, we can fix this. So they created a sort of bottom-heavy typeface, a bit like a tree, so that's not, it's readable by everyone, but dyslexics can read these twice as fast. Fantastic. So the next question is, which of all the publishers here, which one of your content, what content do you have available for dyslexics? I won't say ask for a show of hands, because it's probably none. And I think it's a shame that we don't have that. Why can't we have that? You're probably thinking, well, we've just found out about HTML5, and there's HTML6, and EPUB 3, and MathML this or that. There's just not enough time to do it in our IT department. Well, I have good news for you. Let's see what happens now in the publishing houses. Generally speaking, we all create XML. You create XML, but the XML is generally not released. That's in the archive, right? It's sitting there with cobwebs on it, and you lock it, and one day you're going to open that, and it's this wonderful stuff. So, but from that XML, we create EPUB, we create HTML, PDF, etc., and we release that according to whatever the style, whatever we want. This CSS, that CSS, this version. Now, and I feel that there's so much IT now going on in publishing that publishers are taking their eye off what they're there for. Publishers should create content, good content, copy-edited content, peer-reviewed properly. So I have a sort of upside down, a kind of alternative proposal. Instead of taking the making the XML and creating all these different formats, why don't publishers just release the XML or publish the XML? If it's open access, then it's CC BY, it's open anyway, we can do whatever. If it's not, well, if I'm a subscriber, give me the XML. And I turn it into whatever I want. Or a third party, or on my behalf, who might charge me 10 cents, will turn it into what I like to read. For example, I like to read papers. I remember when I was an academic in the old days, I used to like, I remember references with papers with numerical reference as opposed to author year. I just prefer that. Other people prefer the author year. But the house style of, say, Nature is not exactly what I want. Well, tough luck. I have to read it that way. Now, if you release the XML, a third party can take that, and it's easy to do. They press a button, and they can create my style as opposed to your style. So give the readers the style that they want to read. I want to read it on an iPad this way or that way. I want my, as I say, my references to be in this style. I want my references to pop up when I click on it. I don't want to list at the end. So that's my proposal. Get rid of your IT department. It's the last talk or the last session. I can run out the back door. Create content, but tag it properly. Good XML. There's good XML and there's very bad XML, and there's a lot of awful XML. I'm sorry. Most of it, of course, I don't know because you won't let me see it because it's in your vault. But the ones, if you go to the open access, the ones that you can see, half of them are really not good. In fact, you wipe the disks. It's rather than keep it there. So that's the model. We talked about the version of record as well. There's something I call my voice is going. The format of record, right? There's a version of record, which is this version, that version, that version. Now, if you go to a site at the moment, you will see the HTML, you see the PDF, you can download the PDF, and sometimes you can download the XML, there might be EPUB, etc. What if in 5 years' time, I say, hang on, this says CO2, but that says CO3, and we never saw this in the XML. I go to the publisher, I say, well, which one is right? It makes a big difference. And the publisher says, well, we don't know. And the author's dead. We have no idea. That's a major problem. Which is the format of record? So my proposal is, your XML, we'll say HTML5, you have to nominate one format of record as opposed to version of record. Release that, and you never have to do anything else again. That's the one record. If EPUB 5 comes tomorrow, a third party will write a filter, create whatever. If someone is blind, that can be read out. So that's my alternative vision.
And how close are we to that?
I wanted to do a live demo, but you didn't let me, Patrick.
No. So
it's a good 2 days ago. I said, well, shall I? No, you can't do that. So I have a demo. I can.
So they can come and see you and
and it's not just me. It's not. You can come to me, but other people. I press a button, and several of you have seen it. XML. You get one PDF with numerical references, one with author year, etc. So
absolutely.
We are there. We are right there.
But isn't that normally what should be achieved by having standard bodies defining how the XML has to be written?
We have though. We have DTD. We have.
Yeah, but why is the XML then badly written? Go ahead, Gurvinder.
I have a question. I mean, it's the same thing what I was asking Daniel. So rather than giving XML, which I think is a great idea, then allowing users to do what with it, but knowing, as he's saying, XML is very critical, and we're going to put more and more in it so that you can drive any kind of output from it. Rather than making it available only for a small subset of people who can actually deal with it and do things with it, why not we go and provide them option from a style perspective? Because what you're saying is like what you like versus a journal's house style. That's what's driving it. It's not the content. It's not the XML. So if we allow or give alternatives to the reader, so they can choose how they would like to see the references. Isn't that better than giving the source itself?
Well, you now give choices. They now have one PDF, one HTML. You can give them 5 choices, but I may want another choice. As I say, I'm a dyslexic. I want it in that typeface. So what I'm saying is just let someone else do whatever they want with it. On my demo, I do a silly thing where I typeset, you get a PDF, where every word is rotated round and round for some stupid reason, but I may want it that way. Let readers read it in the way. I have one with every other word is a different color. Maybe my vision is, I've got some problem that I can see it in that way. So you just let people do what they want. Just open it up.
Questions from the floor? Yes, sir.
Regarding word processors and burning their creators at the stake that you mentioned earlier, and that leading to bad XML. If you could select one word processor, and maybe one that's actually used in the widely, and one word processor that you just personally like, and maybe an open standards word processor, what would it be?
So the question is there one word processor that trumps all others?
Well, I mean, to all intents and purposes, there's only one word processor left. That's the problem. We had some very good word processors going back, say, 15, 20
What about
years.
Google Docs?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't use word processors, so I don't know. The problem with the word processor is this. When the first word processor came out, if you remember, say, Mac Write on the Mac, it was actually a replacement for a typewriter. It was a nice typewriting, but you could do things like change the typeface, change the font size, which is amazing. It wasn't designed to hold content as such. It was designed to be printed and read on paper. And really that has continued. The problem is what we're taking is taking structured data, structured thoughts in an author's mind, and we're putting it into a soup in an unstructured format. You can put yes, you can get XML out, but that's not in the end, if the heading's at the bottom, you put a couple of returns to put at the top of the next page. That's the problem. So it fundamentally, but just shortly to answer the question, going back, I believe what you want is something, an online form, something in the cloud. You go in, and it's a form that you fill in. You put in, and then once you finish, you have a structure.
Yeah, but everybody hates filling forms.
No, they don't. People love filling. You buy something from Amazon, right? People spend a lot of time, and they're happy to do it. You finish, no human looks at that, but the box arrives the next day at your door automatically. It's fully structured content, and we all do it. We go to eBay, we go to Expedia. So authors hate writing papers for publishers now because they have got to go. They read this. There's instructions for author that still says we want double space, right? This double space, man, double space. 20 years old. So.
Someone else, please.
My question with the delivering the XML is somebody could create a style sheet or transform that actually uses data. So then how do you guarantee that the person who's reading whatever they've now created is actually the same as the publisher intended?
Okay, so the question is, through the style sheet conversion process, you might forget some of the data or ignore some of the data, and how do you know that all the information that you need is provided?
The version of record and the one format of record is still on your site. That doesn't change. So if someone else makes a mistake, it's their problem. And we'll know where it comes from. But that's life. That happens all the time. They're not doing their job right, and they won't keep their job.
I have an answer from a publisher perspective.
Can you speak in the mic?
Absolutely. I do have an answer from I'm a big evangelist for open standards. I think that they keep the world moving, and I have a background in information science. But I will say that this is a problem that a lot of for-profit publishers have faced in many different spaces. And our for-profit publishing models are largely based on licensed content, on selling to institutions based on the amount of usage and things like that. And so one really big challenge that we have is if we give you that open XML without a service for determining authorization. So really what we need to give you is an entire API,
Correct.
not just an open article. We lose our relationship with the user as the publisher of that content. And I think that's really where the challenge is. What we're trying to do to fix that is to observe all the different ways that people want that content and give them options. We haven't specifically tackled the dyslexic problem because we believe that participating in things like the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines in Section 508 gets us enough of the way there that browser vendor technologies can come over and solve that problem once for many publishers. So we try not to come up with brand new UI for solving things like that really need to be solved across every single HTML page on the internet and not just ours. That's why we don't bake a font size switcher into our web UI. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, just opening up the text is not strategic for us because that's not necessarily the business we're in. And so that's really where it gets challenging, is how do you ensure that the people who should have access to your content have as much access to it as they want and can do whatever they want with it. And it goes beyond that. It goes beyond presentation and goes into things like an enrichment. I think it was during the big data session that they were talking about how do you get around the institutional problem of wanting to download 5 million articles and then crawl it for drug names or things like that, or genes. So how do we license our content while also ensuring that it's only in the hands of the people who have sponsored or paid for it, outside of the open access world, outside of the free content world, if we're for-profit publishers?
Good point. I'm not sure. I'm being slightly controversial to find out, to see what I'm missing. I'd say if you release that, you will find that third parties are going to come up with so many fantastic formats and ways of consuming that you'll get more readership. You'll get readership that you will, or people consuming the content that we never thought about.
I don't disagree. I think that's why companies are investing in things like digital science, for instance, for-profit, owned now, but really charged with finding new ways of remixing and presenting content.
I would say, though, I think there's a danger there that let's distinguish between for-profit publishers and non-for-profit. There are very profitable open access publishers. Okay, so open access is not. I mean, Hindawi, who I have great respect for, they make. I think their profit margin is over 50%, and they're quite open about it. I mean, someone can go and compete with them. They make 50%. They're open access, so it's possible to make a lot of money out of open access. I like the idea personally of open access, but making a lot of money at it too. It is possible, and allowing people to do then what they want. You mentioned text mining. To really do text mining, you want your content to be open. You want your XML to be fully open, and this is the problem right now with people wanting to text mine.
I just to finish, I'd say publishers could choose to upload all their content in something like Google's analytics engine and keep having it there, and then for subscription allow people to kind of run the queries that they want.
Yeah, I definitely think that they're moving towards solving that problem is moving towards an open intermediary that honors things like license types, while also opening up the data across publishers.
Okay, so I think that was wonderfully enriching. I want to thank all the panelists for patiently waiting for their turn to speak and finding great ways to make this interactive. Thank you very much.